Hi, and welcome back to another lecture in FSHN 101. My name is Toni Marie Gist, and today we're going to be talking about French fries. And who doesn't love French fries? So our learning objectives for this module are: 1, let's talk about some history of French fries, discuss its sensory qualities, show you a little French fry recipe. We're going to discuss its chemistry, nutrition, regulation, and a little bit of food safety. First, let's start with defining a French fry. What is a French fry? Well, the shape is mainly a thin strip of potato with a golden brown or yellow color on the outside. It's crispy on that outside but soft in the middle, usually hot to the touch, and it has a savory, salty, and slightly sweet taste to it. A little bit of history with our French fries. The first fries were in France around the 1800s. In the 1860s, it was sold with fish to create fish with chips. And potatoes needed to be cooked due to the indigestion. So we have to cook it somehow. So why not fry them so that we can gelatinize that starch and allow our bodies to process it, as well as have it as a nice complement to our fish. What I want you to do on your own is watch this video on starch gelatinization. And I want you to answer the questions on starch gelatinization that are posed in your student handout. So let's see if you answer the questions properly. The first question, starch is a polymer of what? Well, if you put glucose, you are correct. The two types of starch are linear, which is called amylose, and branched, which is called amylopectin. When heated to 80 degrees centigrade, what happens? Well, water will enter and cause the granule to swell. Swell is the word we were looking for. Hydrogen bonds between starch molecules will break, and hydrogen bonds between starch and water will actually form. What is the above called? Very simply put, this is all collectively called gelatinization. So let's talk about the current history of French fries. In 1945, we began industrial production of fries, and this is thanks to J.R. Simplot. He had a company in Idaho, and you betcha it was a potato company. Then in 2004, McDonald's reported to utilize 27% of the world's production of French fries. So there's a big jump in about 50, 60 years where McDonald's is taking over a large part of this particular business. And currently, McDonald's fries are the most popular fast food item sold to date. Because McDonald's fries are so famous, I want you to watch this 6-minute video discussing the McDonald's French fries. Answer the questions in your student handout and let me know what your answers are when we get back to the next slide. So here are the questions we want to answer. How are the potatoes cut for the McDonald's fries? Well, if you said they were shot with high-pressure water through a slicer, you are correct. What is dextrose, and why do they add it? Well, dextrose is a simple sugar, and it helps with the browning reaction. What is sodium acid pyrophosphate, and why do they add it? Well, this reduces the level of acrylamide, which is actually a bad chemical that can make your health not so good, is a short version. Also, the sodium acid pyrophosphate is going to help keep the fries a golden color. Why do they do a first fry? Well, this helps kills bacteria, as well as it makes it faster to cook at the restaurant. And if you want to explain the history of the natural beef flavor, first, McDonald's started adding beef fat to fry the fries. It was delicious, but it was not vegan or vegetarian friendly. Then they used the essence of beef. And the essence of beef, it was a little bit different as far as its composition. And now it's a vegetarian friendly hydrolyzed milk and wheat. So it's not vegan friendly, but it is vegetarian friendly. So if someone's an ovo-lacto vegetarian, they can still enjoy McDonald's famous French fries. And can vegans consume McDonald's French fries? Why or why not? If you were paying attention just a second ago, you know that no. Unfortunately, your vegan friends will not be able to enjoy the McDonald's French fries while still adhering to their vegan diet because the hydrolyzed milk is actually an animal product and it helps make that natural beef flavor. So how do we make the perfect French fries? First, we want to peel and rinse the potatoes. Then cut the potatoes into sticks, then place the sticks into a large bowl and submerge them in cold water. Let them soak for 2 to 3 hours or even overnight. Then when you're ready to make the French fries, drain off the water, lay the potatoes onto baking sheets lined with paper towels and dry off those potatoes. Heat a few inches of oil in a heavy pot at 300 degrees, or in 3 to 4 batches, you can cook these potatoes until they're soft. Sometimes it takes about 4 minutes or 5 minutes per batch. They should still be pale in color with this first fry. They shouldn't be browned. And then you remove each batch, drain on new or dry paper towels. After you do that first fry, what you're going to do is you're going to turn up the heat until the oil reaches 400 degrees Fahrenheit. When the oil is very hot, start frying the potatoes in batches again and do the second fry until the fries are golden and crisp. Then you can remove the potatoes from the oil and drain them on the paper towels. Last, sprinkle with salt and dive in. So with this, the ingredients you would need to get are some russet potatoes, some vegetable or peanut oil, enough for frying, and then some sea salt. So a very simple set of ingredients. So let's review this recipe. Peeling and rinsing the potatoes. Why are we doing this? Well, peeling takes the tough outer skin off so that the potatoes cook more evenly. Rinsing gets the remaining dirt or particles off of the outside, making it safer for you to consume them as well as it's more palatable. If we're cutting the potatoes into sticks, the smaller surface area makes for faster cooking. Also, if the sticks are uniform, it makes for even cooking. When we soak them in water, what it's going to do is it's drawing out some of the starch, preventing the fries from sticking to each other. When we dry those potatoes, the temperature drop will occur in the oil if the potatoes are wet. So we want to make sure that we have potatoes that are as dry on the outside as possible before we drop them in the oil. If we do have fries that are a little bit moist on the outside, it takes longer for them to cook and more oil is absorbed into those fries themselves. We also have that first fry. The first fry allows for starch gelatinization and moisture removal. That second fry is going to allow for the Maillard reaction to occur. Then we're going to place the fries on paper towels, and this is going to allow us to soak off excess oil. You can also put them on a rack and allow for the oil to drip down away from the fries themselves. And sprinkling with sea salt just gives it a little more flavor, and you can dive in whenever you're ready. So make sure you understand what happens each step of the way and the science behind it. But it's not just any potato that you can use to make French fries. There are differences between potatoes. We have potatoes that are highest in starch. Oftentimes they're thicker skinned, they're lower in moisture, and they're lower in sugar content. When they're peeled, they'll fall apart when they're boiled. Things like russet potatoes are going to be an example of a high starch potato. We also have comparatively lower starch potatoes. These are thinner skinned, they're higher in moisture, and they're a little higher in sugar. These retain their shape when they're cooked in water. These are things like red potatoes or fingerling potatoes. So even though the high starch potatoes like russet might fall apart when they're boiled, when we're frying them, they actually stick together pretty well. So russet potatoes are fabulous for frying. Things like red potatoes and fingerling potatoes would be great potatoes to use for something like a mashed potato, which you're going to boil the potato first and then you're going to whip it. We also want to make sure we choose the proper oil. All cooking fats or oils contain triglycerides, which have a mix of fatty acids in their structure, and the fatty acids are either saturated, polyunsaturated, or monounsaturated. And it comes down to a few different properties. You can have different fats, such as the beef fat, comparatively to something like cottonseed oil, or even if you look further down to something like sesame oil. Each of them is going to have a different ratio of saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fatty acids. The different properties allow for what we call a different smoke point. And the smoke point is the temperature at which the oil begins to degrade. For frying, you want a really high smoke point so that you don't have a situation where a lot of smoke is coming off of that fry oil and we have a situation where the oil is degrading, causing unpleasant flavors as well as characteristics. We also have different flavors depending upon which oil or fat you're going to be using. The source is actually going to contribute to the flavor itself. The different combinations of fatty acids are providing different flavors, as well as different textures. Saturated fats have a much firmer texture comparatively to monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fatty acids. You might also wonder about an air fryer. So how does an air fryer work? And can we fry French fries with one? Well, something to note, air fryers are more or less like small convection ovens where air is going to circulate around the food itself. So we still do need oil to get that crispy outside if you want a fry type texture. So oftentimes foods that people will cook in air fryers are ones that have a little oil in them when you get them in a bag from the store itself, or you might need to coat your food with a little bit of oil. To learn a little bit more, watch this video and take notes as outlined on your student notes. If you want to make air fryer French fries, what you're going to need is some non-stick cooking spray, russet potato, olive oil or another type of oil, salt, and you can even add some fresh ground pepper if you like. You're going to preheat your air fryer to 380 degrees Fahrenheit and spray the basket with non-stick spray. You're going to cut the potato in half lengthwise and then slice it into even wedges as you get them ready. You're going to put the fries in a medium bowl and rinse them well with cold water, then drain and pat dry with paper towels, just like you did the last recipe. Then you're going to toss the fries with oil in a medium bowl, sprinkle with a little salt, and if you want, you can put several grinds of pepper. Then, working in batches, put the fries in an even layer in the air fryer basket with no overlapping fries. You're going to have to turn them halfway through and allow for a little longer cooking time, 14 to 16 minutes to be precise. Then you can remove and season with salt. Let's see if you can answer this question. How about just potatoes? Potatoes themselves, they contain a significant amount of which macronutrient? Is it lipids, proteins, or carbohydrates? Well, if you have a plain russet potato, the answer is going to be carbohydrates. Potatoes contain a significant amount of carbohydrates in the form of starch, as well as, if you leave the skins on, fiber. Carbohydrates are composed primarily of the carbonyl and hydroxyl functional groups, hence the name carbohydrate. Lipids in fry oil are composed of amino and ketone functional groups, so they're a little bit different. If we're looking at the macronutrient breakdown of the foods that we're discussing. So here we have carbohydrates, protein, and fat in our French fries themselves. So if we have one serving of French fries, it's going to be approximately 402 calories. So we do have 5 grams of protein times 4 calories per gram. We have, again, our digestible carbohydrates. We take 51.5 grams of total carbohydrates. We subtract out the fiber, which is indigestible. We multiply it by 4 calories per gram of digestible carbohydrates to give us approximately 187 carbohydrate calories. And then we can take our 21.6 grams of fat, multiply by 9 calories per gram to give us 194.4 fat calories. And so if we're looking at the breakdown here, again, you have about half the calories from fat, about half the calories from carbohydrates, with some of the calories from protein. So if you want to look at a pie chart, you can see the breakdown a little bit better, with, again, 48% of the total calories as lipid or fat, 47% of the total calories from carbohydrates, and we have about 5% of the total calories from protein in those French fries. If we're going to consume those French fries, we need to digest them. It starts in the mouth with chemical digestion with amylase, which is a digestive enzyme that breaks down starches. We also have mechanical digestion with chewing in the mouth. Then this digesta, or this bolus, is sent through the esophagus by peristalsis to the stomach, where pepsin starts to digest the proteins. The digesta is mixed with gastric juice, and then it turns that fry into a liquid, which we refer to as chyme or chyme. Then that chyme or chyme moves on to the small intestine, where it's mixed with bile from the liver and gallbladder and enzymes that are from the small intestine as well as the pancreas. This is where the final chemical digestion of starch, protein, fats, and lipids occurs. The remains are going to be sent through the large intestine and pass through the rectum and the anus and out the body itself. Our French fries have some minerals associated with them. We have sodium and chloride in the salt that we add to it, and we have potassium naturally in the potatoes itself. The minerals are going to be absorbed in the small intestine and the large intestine. We have a little bit of absorption in the stomach, but not too much. These minerals are readily absorbed into the bloodstream, and this works conjunctively with co-transporters with glucose and amino acids. We can also absorb the macronutrients. So our oil or fats are going to be digested in the small intestine primarily, as well as they're going to have most of their absorption in the small intestine. The triglycerides, again, with a glycerol backbone and 3 fatty acids, are what make up oil or fats, and those triglycerides are broken down to their glycerol and fatty acid components, and then they can be absorbed into the lymph and into the bloodstream. The potato itself is primarily made of starch with a little bit of sugar and a little bit of protein. The starch is broken down to glucose units before it's absorbed. The glucose travels through the blood from the lumen of the small intestine, and it goes then through our vessels to the liver. But again, it's going to be absorbed using a co-transporter with sodium. Protein is broken down to its component amino acids and absorbed into the bloodstream that way. So even though you don't think about French fries having essential nutrients, they actually do. So we have things like our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our fat, as well as some minerals are needed in our body for health and well-being. Potatoes have very little vitamin C, calcium, or iron. But as you know, potatoes also have some non-essential components. So even though there's no cholesterol or trans fat in a traditionally cooked French fry, there's also some saturated fat oftentimes, and we might be consuming an abundance of sodium or chloride in those French fries too. So keep in mind, even though it might allow us to meet some essential nutrient needs, I wouldn't say French fries are recommended for your health and well-being. With regard to French fries, there are some regulations. We can have a US grade A quality standard French fry that has good flavor and color, it's uniform in size, it's free from defects, and it has a desirable texture. Some people ask the question, do French fries cause cancer? Well, frying potatoes at certain high temperatures can rise acrylamide levels, and this is something that people say can act as an anticipated human carcinogen. But we can do things to lower acrylamide levels, like we can decrease the reducing sugar levels in potatoes, and we can also avoid extreme temperatures. If potatoes were to try to sell themselves and make some claims, one thing is, if you're trying to gain weight, French fries are an energy-dense food, so they have a lot of calories per bite. They're also high in potassium at about 470 milligrams per serving, so it can meet your potassium needs, which is a good thing. And it can contribute to about 5% of the recommended amount of folic acid. So if you're someone who is a female athlete who's training for marathons and sweating a lot, then you might want to have some French fries after a long run because you can get your energy back. You have a situation where you're consuming enough potassium, sodium, and chloride with those minerals, as well as you're a female childbearing age, so it's hard to get the recommended amount of folic acid anyway. So ultimately, maybe French fries aren't the worst for everyone, but you do have to be careful when you're consuming them. When we're talking about potatoes, tell me about the storage and shelf life. Well, we want them at about 47 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Oftentimes during the fall and the spring, I'll keep my potatoes in my garage because the garage is going to be about that temperature. Pre-peeled potatoes can be stored at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, so you want to keep them in the refrigerator. And if you keep them in the refrigerator with water, they can last 8 to 12 days. Potatoes stored at 40 degrees Fahrenheit versus 45 degrees Fahrenheit enhances the chemical properties that are best for frying. When we look at the moisture content of potatoes, raw potatoes have a moisture content of 80%, so a lot of that potato is actually water. French fries are often blanched, which is that first fry, to decrease the moisture content for a crispier fry. Deep frying also decreases moisture content further. And after being processed, French fries have a moisture content of about 50%, so they've lost significant moisture through that frying process. You may wonder about the microbial activity of French fries. Well, potatoes grow in soil. There are bacteria and fungi which live in that soil, so we do want to make sure we wash them pretty well. During processing, we've got lots of bacteria, yeast, and mold that can be found in these processed potatoes. So after processing, we do want to make sure we keep them the proper temperature, either in the refrigerator or in the freezer. Frozen potato products are not cryogenically frozen. Bacteria can actually be in those products themselves, and therefore we want to make sure that we're properly cooking them after we get them out of the freezer itself. Frying the potatoes at 168 degrees Fahrenheit or higher is going to kill all those bacteria. And you may wonder what the future of French fries may be. Well, growth in the market of delivery and carryout has led to changes in the formula from many French fry providers. So they need to make sure that the French fries stay crispy even after 30 minutes. So one of the biggest changes that providers have made is the addition of a starchy coating. So you may have noticed over the past few years, especially during this pandemic, that we've added a starchy coating to some of these French fries. So your French fries may have a different texture when you get them. Restaurants are already moving towards these newer fries to adjust to needs. With these adjustments, allows us to deliver fast food via bike or with Uber Eats or other things. So as you investigate your food a little bit more, feel free to stop into the virtual tutoring center or my office hours if you have any questions. We're here for you.